3, 2, 1.
Thank you. So this is Senate Government Operations. It is Tuesday, March 23rd. And excuse me for I'm not sure what's going on here, but anyway. So today we're going to look at a couple different things. Under the proposal to create the Agency of Public Safety from a department, the reorganization is one of the issues is putting the academy in the department. And so we would like to have some discussion on how to maintain the independence of the council. So we've asked a couple different people to come and talk to us about that. Bill Sorrell, Bill Sheets, Pete Lynch is the head of the Fire Academy, and Michael DeRoches is somewhat responsible for the Fire Academy. I'm not exactly sure your role. And Chris Corbin, I'm not sure your role. Do you want to just tell me what your role is?
Yes, I'm the chairman of the Vermont Fire Service Training Council.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Because I know that has had independence for some time, and we want to hear how that works and how it might work with the council also, the Criminal Justice Council. So with that, what I'd like to do is, I think first hear a little update from Mr. Sorrell about where the council is right now. Just a brief overview, and then we'll get to the independence portion of it. Does that work? Well, you are muted though. And I know people have been trying to do that to you for years, but
success. And I think tomorrow we are presenting on issues of the work of some of the S-124 directives to the council to carry out.
Right. Tomorrow we're going to hear the report on the use of military equipment, body cams, and the issue of what kinds of things are we looking for when we're hiring when we're looking for law enforcement people, and then what additional kinds of things are we looking for when we're looking for supervisory roles. So we'll hear those reports tomorrow. But this is just kind of an update and mainly to talk about the independence.
Okay. Well, let me deal with the independence first. I think I, in prior testimony, expressed some of my personal opinions on the fact that under S-124, the council is essentially in charge of the training of law enforcement officers, and consequently, with the expansion of the old training council to the 24-person Criminal Justice Council, and the addition of so many different voices that have not traditionally been involved on issues of police training, I expressed my view that my personal view that the council should be independent of an agency or some other wing in state government, and that in a related way that the executive director of the council implementing the council's directives on training of law enforcement, that the council should have the authority to appoint the executive director. So very briefly, the council has been very busy, and I'm pleased to report that you'll hear from Bill Sheets today, and again tomorrow. I won't be able to be here tomorrow because I have a conflict with my second COVID vaccination this time tomorrow afternoon.
That's exciting.
But we have just recently successfully completed the hunt for a permanent executive director, And I think it's April 12th will be the official day for Heather Simons, who's in the hierarchy of the Department of Corrections and was the clear choice of the council and outside folks whom Commissioner Sherling brought into the process to give feedback on who should be the new executive director. Governor's approval, and the council has hired Heather Simons, and we're going to miss Bill Sheets. He is doing and has done great public service, serving us in an interim capacity. But we're looking forward to come April, Heather being on board. So at the February monthly meeting of the council, under S-124, the council was to consult with others and take a position, a council position, on whether it should be independent of an agency of public safety or some other entity in state government. And so we put that to the council at our February meeting. And in the invitation to testify today, there was a question as to whether some other council members, other than just hearing from me, could be arranged. And I thought the most expeditious way to do that was to just very briefly read from the section of the approved minutes of that February meeting on this issue of the independence of the council and the hiring of the executive director. And Chief Burkell, who's the representative of the Chiefs Association, Chris Burkell from Brandon, once the question was put to the council for discussion, he said that the council should be autonomous. Sheriff Mark Anderson, representing the sheriffs, said that the council should be memorialized in statute and retain authority. Trevor Whipple, who represents under S-124 the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and happens to have been the former police chief of South Burlington, when he remarked, said that the philosophy of the League of Cities and Towns and his own personal opinion is that the council should be working on training models up to and including the hiring of the executive director who will implement those policies as designed. Council member Karen Tronsgaard Scott she's the executive director of the Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. She said that she believes that independence of the council is necessary. Just a couple more. Council member Kareem Chapman, who is a gubernatorial appointee, a representative of individuals who have expressed mental health challenges in their life. And Kareem Chapman is with the Psychiatric Survivors Organization out of Rutland, very active member of the council, contributing member. And he said, quote, "It is really refreshing to hear the overwhelming support in diversity and voices. The bigger picture is the community needs to know that it's not just law enforcement, but others have a voice in the picture." Brian Searles, another gubernatorial appointee, interestingly, another former South Burlington police chief, among other jobs in state government and out-of-state government. He said the person in the executive director chair is representative of all law enforcement in the state. It's important when speaking to the legislature to be viewed as independent and not controlled by any one department or agency. And finally, Chief Burkell said that the council being autonomous and appointing the executive director is a healthier choice and model. And it's noted in our minutes, which we have filed with the committee for this morning, so that you have them in your records of this hearing. No member of the council voiced sentiments in favor of a reduced independence of the council. So I've quoted from those who spoke to the issue, but no one, when given an opportunity to speak otherwise, from law enforcement or from outside law enforcement, thought that the council should be other than independent, and no one thought that the council shouldn't retain the authority to appoint the executive director and the other chief positions at the council, or excuse me, at the academy. And interestingly, I mentioned that Heather Simons will be the new permanent executive director come April, but the council, since it got up and running at the end of December, has filled the director position for administrative services, all sort of the logistical stuff at the council, a woman named Lindsay Tvierge. And so I said at the council meeting last week, our March meeting, I am quite confident that there is no police academy in this country that has its 3 top position all female, and not just female. We are fortunate. I think we've got 3 very, very competent officials. The hierarchy of the police academy is in good hands, and I'm delighted that the council has accomplished the things that it's accomplished so far. And you'll hear more about what the council's doing. The real work of the council is in the subcommittees and the so-called working groups, many of which we've created just in the last 2.5 months, and you'll hear more on that tomorrow. So I hope, Madam Chair, that I've articulated the feelings of the council on the independence issue as it relates to an agency of public safety or any other potential entity in state government that the council might be legislatively put under, answer to.
So I think that committee, does anybody have any questions first? Right now, okay. So as I see it here, the conundrum is that the academy is slated to be put under DPS or APS, whatever you want to call it, but that the council will remain independent, and that's where we need to make sure that we. Did you want to say something, Bill?
Yes, Senator. I think in earlier testimony, both Bill Sheets and I talked about putting the academy, not the curriculum and the training, but sort of the nuts and bolts of the academy under either an agency of public safety or some other like entity under state government for budgeting purposes, contracting purposes, applying for and managing grants. I think that has merit. It's a bit of a fine line because the council is going to be the boss of all of the training, but we've got such a small staff that those kinds of IT issues and the like, being in an agency structure that has its own IT division or unit or whatever, those kinds of things are of value. And just another important thing on the issue of the council, and it really has been playing out in this legislative session, is that even though Commissioner Sherling has stated publicly that he's of the view that the finance and the funding of the academy was severely underfunded, and I don't want to, my recollection is he said upwards of $1.5 million underfunded, but don't hold me to that. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. But it's very significant underfunding. And unfortunately, in the governor's recommend, we were in for a minor increase that was more cost of living issues. And that is the council, have appeared before the House GovOps, House Appropriations multiple times, and we have not yet testified before Senate Appropriations, but we're very pleased and relieved that, as Executive Director Sheets will talk about more either today or tomorrow, that there's a recommendation for two very critical new positions for the operations of the council, particularly the area of professional regulation of law enforcement allegedly guilty or having committed unprofessional acts. And it's for an investigative position, an independent investigator, and legal counsel. And so we haven't had the opportunity to appear before Senator Kitchell's committee, but we look forward to that. And we have not been afraid to be respectfully critical of the administration's recommendation of the budgeting for the functioning of the academy. And I think going forward, whatever you do on whether you put the academy under the Agency of Public Safety or some other entity, the fact that the council should be allowed to be an independent voice for the financial needs of the operation of the training of police would be very important. And we hope that if your committee is in agreement that whether it's in a formal way or in cafeteria talk, that if you think these positions and maybe some one-time money for some staffing needs that Bill Sheets is prepared to talk about are important to really be able to start to really do the kinds of things you have instructed the council to do under S124. We hope that you will speak supportively to Senator Kitchell's committee, giving due regard to the council's needs. And we'd appreciate your help in that respect.
Thank you. I think that this is a big priority for us, so we probably will speak favorably.
We'd much appreciate it, Senator.
Yeah.
So, Senator Clarkson?
Yes, your Senate Government Operations Committee are strong advocates for this bill.
Madam Chair,
I have
we
to
lost
say,
that
our
whole thing.
chair has.
Excuse me, Senator Collmore?
Yeah, we lost your whole statement there, Madam Chair. You kind of froze up for about a minute.
Oh, thank you.
And again.
All I said was that we're strong proponents of the academy and of the council, and will probably speak favorably to the Appropriations Committee. Sorry about that.
Right.
Senator Collmore, I just saw you freeze after you, so
Okay.
it might be you.
I guess we're all freezing up.
I know, on this warm, sunny spring day.
So, Senator Clarkson, what were you saying?
I just wanted to finish by saying that not only are we strong advocates of this bill and of the changes with the council, and I have to say our chair has an incredible record in appropes. So I think that you do want the Senate Government Operations Committee to be your advocates for anything you want to ask for in appropes.
Well, it's a little bit weirder to do it this way, but at least when you go into the Appropriations Committee now, you're not sitting in these little chairs like a supplement.
Right.
Supplement. So what I'd like to do is right now take advantage of the three people from the Fire Academy who are here, who have joined us, and talk a little bit about the fire academy is under DPS right now, as I understand, but that the council is independent, has autonomy and is independent. Am I right about that? And I guess, how do you want to approach this? The three of you, how do you, so, yes, Mike.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you for extending the invitation to be here today, and thank you to the committee. I think what I will do is give kind of a just a little bit of a landscape here that may help frame some conversation. The Fire Service Training Council is housed in in the Department of Public Safety now under 20 VSA Chapter 179. So it is not by virtue an independent council such as the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. Framework-wise, there is a lot of distinct difference between the powers and duties of the Fire Service Training Council and that of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. So there are two distinct councils with responsibilities. But the Fire Service Training Council is housed in fire safety. The Fire Academy is housed in the Department of Public Safety under the Division of Fire Safety. So that's kind of the landscape. There really is no, they're housed there now. And to speak to a little bit of what Bill Sorrell was alluding to, there are some advantages that we see on the fire service side of it being housed in public safety, and to speak to IT support, budgeting, the Division of Fire Safety pays for promulgating the rules and going through the rulemaking process. And we're also 100% embedded with the fire service. And Pete and Chris Corbin, they can speak to the details of the council's responsibilities as they go. But I will just add that this council has been extremely effective. The relationship that the Division of Fire Safety and Public Safety has with the Fire Service Training Council is probably the best that it's been in years. So we are, from speaking from my position, very happy with where the Fire Service Training Council sits. We're very pleased with the work of the council. The council is responsible for the training aspects. We don't discipline firefighters. So there is a lot of difference between the councils that I just wanted to emphasize to you. Our training council is made up of 12 members. Basically, all the fire service groups are represented. We have the Commissioner of Labor, Commissioner of Health, Commissioner of Public Safety, myself. And anyways, under 20 VSA, we have a 12-member group. So that's kind of a quick rundown. And also to touch base a little bit, I also chair the governance committee down there at the facility. So we have a legislative governance committee that oversees some areas, access and use, contracts, capital construction bills. So there's a great relationship that exists down there right now between all the users of that training facility. So I just want to emphasize that. So in testimony at future times, if you are engaged in conversations regarding the governance committee, that you know that we have a single voice coming out of that training facility regarding those specific areas of responsibility. We do not engage in training. So the councils stay independent there on the training of their respective professions, where this governance committee is there on those specific areas of access, use, contracts, and capital construction. So that's kind of the landscape, but the council's in fire safety now.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yep.
Any questions for Mike? Pete, do you want to, and in full disclosure, I'll say that Pete was on the Brattleboro Fire Department, and I have seen him I'm sure you're happy now not having to deal with bed bugs every other day.
It's kind of sad that that's my reputation, right? But
Well, you have a better reputation than that. Everybody in Brattleboro loved you.
thank you, Madam Chair. And it's great to be with you. So I think I'd like to talk about day-to-day operations within the Fire Academy and allow the chair of the Fire Training Council, Chris Corbin, to talk about the council and the specificity it has. So I suspect that most of you are pretty comfortable with the Fire Academy and what we do, but I'd just like to take a quick minute to talk about how we fit into the Department of Public Safety and the Division of Fire Safety. So thank you to Director DeRosa. The Division of Fire Safety are the folks that are in charge of the Fire Academy. I specifically answer directly to Director DeRosa as Chief of Training for the Fire Academy. And the council doesn't have much to do with our day-to-day operations. The chair will talk about that and certification and professional qualification board, fire service. We, in our day-to-day operations, we employ 7 full-time people who manage training, development, and place classes around the state. As you may be aware, the fire service in Vermont, which is about 5,500 people, is more than 95% volunteer. And so what makes us a little different from the folks at the Police Academy is the bulk of our programs are outreach and not on campus. And so it is important that we are out in the field in the 230 communities that have fire departments to assist them with training. And because they are mostly volunteer, our training happens a lot of the time on nights and weekends. Some of our classes are as long as 200 hours long. They start the 1st of September and they complete with a certification exam in June. And so it requires us to have about 100 part-time or temporary employees in order to manage that training. And all of those employees are certified to be instructors for the academy. Some at levels for entry-level firefighters, some to instruct officer level training, and others in special rescue, and that could be hazmat as well. So as a fire academy, we employ a great number of people temporarily. We manage a budget with a special fund of about $1.2 million and a general fund budget. Our special fund budget is insurance money, and the general fund budget is a little bit over $400,000. And so we take great advantage in the Department of Public Safety, both with human resources and with the accounting department, to help manage our employees and manage our budget. And that's a huge advantage for us to have a network that we can reach out to aid us in managing these great groups. We offer, I said earlier, some of our classes are as long as 200 hours. We offer 13 programs which are certification level on a national standard. And those programs are very long in length, and therefore both beginner and then officer level folks. And then we offer about an additional 50 courses, which are shorter, typically under 40 hours. And most of those we can do out in the field, although for specifics like our live fire training, we have to bring people to the academy in Pittsford on the campus that we share with with Bill Sheets and his group. That's kind of an overview of the Fire Academy and our day-to-day operations. Before the chair speaks, I will tell you that over the last 5 years, we've put together about 70 standard operating guidelines to help maneuver our way through our working relationships with the fire service. And about half of those are approved by the council, the training council. So as the chair speaks, keep in mind that while we have a lot of input from the Division of Fire Safety, there is a process that we go to that involves the council, and those 12 members of the council all represent parties that have great interest in how the fire service in Vermont is educated. So thank you again, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks. Before I ask if anybody has questions, I will say that when you were talking about the live training really needs to be at the academy. And I've been working at a place in Brattleboro where we actually destroyed, tore down, I think it's 11 or 15 buildings now. And on each time, the fire department was given the ability to come and go through the roof and go in the buildings, and they didn't do fires, but they did a lot of that. And it's hard to get that kind of training because there isn't an opportunity a lot of times, but it was great to see them out there poking through the roofs of the buildings. But
for years and years, we learned through experience, and through the great work of fire safety in Vermont, our fires have reduced tremendously. And so those men and women coming through the door now don't have the opportunity to gain the experience quickly by going to fire after fire after fire. And that's what makes the training so critical to the safety of the people that we represent throughout the state, critical to the safety of the firefighters that are doing their jobs. And also from a monetary perspective, the more knowledgeable and capable we are, the more we minimize the fire loss in the state. And that's huge in terms of recovery for businesses and homeowners.
yeah. Thanks. Any questions for Pete? And then we'll jump to Chris. Okay, Chris, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for the invitation. As the director said, the council is made up of 12 individuals, 6 of which are appointed by the governor. Just for clarification, I am the chair. I represent the professional firefighters of Vermont. I'm a career fire captain in the city of South Burlington. And I guess I'll just cover both of what the director and the chief of training said in a little bit more detail. Our purview of the council is certification of firefighters and fire officers and fire instructors. However, we do not actually do the certification. The Fire Academy conducts the testing and handles all the certification process. We simply ensure 2 things. One, that the certification meets the National Fire Protection Association standards, and that the testing and certification meet Pro Board requirements. And the Pro Board is a nationally recognized organization in which the state of Vermont has chosen to certify their firefighters at all levels through Pro Board. So if the Fire Academy, go back to what the chief said, day-to-day operations, if the Fire Academy is choosing how they're going to test students, how they're going to evaluate students, if they're going to change curriculum that is based on a program that is a certification program, that all gets run through the council. Anyone who challenges a certification, be it their certification expired or they're trying to challenge the process from an outside agency and they don't for lack of a better term, they want to grieve the situation that they feel they meet the requirements and the chief of training says they don't, then those cases would come before the council for us to deal with and determine per the rules and policies of the council whether they should be certified, should maintain their certification, so on and so forth. We have zero formal contact with the day-to-day operations. However, Chief Lynch has been excellent through his designing of the SOGs and moving the organization forward. As he said, about half those SOGs that they operate under are approved by us, the council, because they affect certification and coursework. The other half, I'd say, of that, half of those are still brought to our attention and asked to be endorsed, where they may not actually fall under our purview, but they impact all the constituents that the council represents. So he brings those forward for our endorsement and our support. And then there are another quarter of those that just completely do not involve us whatsoever. And then he provides those to us for information only. We have no financial backing. We have no financial pot of money. So as the director said, last year in February, we finally put forth and had new rules and policies updated through the legislature. That the cost of that, and frankly the man hours of putting the process through the different aspects of state government, the Division of Fire supported us on and helped me move that process along. So we certainly, as far as that's concerned, we would be in our current state lost if we didn't have the division with us. They definitely provide that support for us, which is important. Just looking at my notes here, I think another thing and I kind of hit on this, but to recognize is the little bit I do know about the Criminal Justice Training Council, they have a much larger scope of work. They have a much larger workload than we do as the Fire Service Training Council. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Fire Academy is covering a lot of the stuff that normally, and the Division of Fire, that normally, the Criminal Justice Training Council on the police side of things would handle. Per statute, we're supposed to meet twice a year. We usually meet 3 to 4 times a year. And just to give you a quick overview, the Professional Firefighters of Vermont have a seat at the table. The Vermont Career Chiefs, the Vermont Fire Chiefs, which are the volunteer fire chiefs in the state, the VSFA, which is the association that represents the Vermont or the volunteer fire service, a member of the public, and who am I missing? And the insurance representative from the insurance companies. They hold the seat at the table, and as the chief had mentioned earlier, that's a pretty big deal because we get a lot of our budget from the insurance companies for the training for the academy, and so they have a seat at the table as well with the training council. I'm happy to answer any questions. Like I said, I think that we are definitely a much simpler organization. We certainly do, as the director said, we do fall under public safety and the statutes, but we definitely work hand in hand with the division and with the Fire Academy. And I don't see, no matter where we're put in the system, the way we would operate, and unless statute changed as to what our governance was, we would still fill the same gap, provide the same mission, and work with the same partners either way.
Thank you. I think that I don't think that we have any intention of changing any statutes around the Fire Academy or the council, but just wanted to get a sense of how it compared with the Criminal Justice Council and the Academy. So, Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to all of you for showing up today and giving us your testimony for sure. Chris, you mentioned something about grieving certification, and I'm just, it just struck me as, okay. So somebody gets into the fire academy, they get trained, and at some point, are they on a path for a professional job, and that's why they need certification? Can you just explain what the certification process looks like and how somebody can grieve it if they've gone through the academy and got trained? I'm not clear on that.
Sure. So if we take two paths, whether we look at the volunteer service or the career fire service, so in state statute, a full-time firefighter defined as working more than 32 hours a week or more than 25 weeks a year has to maintain a minimum certification standard. The volunteer fire service, it's a department organization's decision as to what certifications they are or are not going to make their members achieve and maintain. So the academy certifies and recertifies that firefighter, career or volunteer, through a process. I can give you two examples of situations we normally deal with. One on the career side would be someone either coming in from another state. The academy has pretty strict and obvious path as to how you're going to come from outside of Vermont and maintain or establish a certification here. On a side note, interestingly enough, Vermont is probably one of the most strict states in the entire country for achieving and maintaining firefighter certifications. So a lot of times what happens is we see people from other areas of the country come here, want to maintain their certification, and they don't meet the requirements laid out. So they would put in their paperwork for reciprocity. It would be denied by the academy. They would put a formal letter into the chief of training saying, hey, I want to grieve this. Here are all the reasons. And typically, because it's certification, the chief of training just automatically passes that on to the council. And it happens very infrequently. The few times it has happened on that aspect, it's usually pretty cut and dry as to whether it falls within the rules that we've approved or not. And it ends at that level. So basically, it's someone's end course or end stop in the process to try to gain a certification that they're saying for their own personal reasons they deserve, even though it doesn't meet the state rules. From the volunteer side, we see the struggles of volunteers holding careers, second jobs, third jobs, families, all that. And occasionally we'll deal with a volunteer member who has just, because of the course of life, or whatever the case may be, hasn't been able to maintain their certifications. So they'll come to the academy again and say, hey, this happened in my life and I was unable to maintain my certification. I want an extension. Again, the academy follows their course of action and the rules that we've laid out and says, no, I'm sorry, you don't meet the requirements. You can grieve it to the council if you so choose. And then I would say the majority of the time that's where it ends. But we have seen on rare occasion that volunteer member will come before the council and say, here's my heartache. Here's what happened in my life and why I wasn't able to recertify in time. And here's my proposal as to why I think and how I should get an extension.
Great explanation. Thank you very much, Chris.
Any other questions right now? Senator Polina?
Thanks. I'm just trying to get a handle on the relationship. You say you're under DPS, right? And I'm just wondering, could you give me an example or two of times when you might say, well, we have to make this kind of decision, but we have to go to DPS to see if it's okay. And does that ever come up? I mean, because we're talking about level of independence. And so it's a question for any of you. I just wonder if there's an example of something where you would have to go to DPS to get permission, for lack of a better way of putting it, to do something or not.
I'll start out from the council level. No, the one thing that I will say, I'll just go back to the example I used earlier, where when we had to, when it came time to produce new rules and policies of the council and put that through the ICAR process and the legislative process. Obviously, there's a financial aspect to that. There's also just a labor-intensive procedure process to that,
Sure.
where the Division of Fire, Director DeRosa provided the funding out of his budget to go through the process, and also provided, at the time, the deputy director as I'll call my wing person. He did a lot of the legwork, a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the day-to-day policies and procedures that he knew because he worked in state government day in and day out and did it with multiple other rules and policies throughout state government. So that's really the only aspect I would speak to from the council level that we need DPS for, the Division of Fire. But I will say that there's a very good working relationship where I think the fire service, not just the council, but the council is representative of the entire fire service in the state, and the council, or the fire service through the council, benefits greatly from that connection with the Division of Fire, aka DPS.
So I saw that before we go to Senator Clarkson, I saw that, Pete, you had your hand up also, I think, to respond to that question.
Thank you. Senator, was your question specific to the council, or was it the Fire Academy in general?
In general. Well, the council, most importantly, perhaps, but in general.
So from a Fire Academy standpoint, in terms of answering to Director DeRosa and the Division of Fire Safety on budgetary issues, we answered to him. On personnel issues, we answer to him. Anything contractual, we answered directly to the Division of Fire Safety within the Department of Public Safety.
He's a tough boss, right?
He's tremendously supportive of us and the council, and well, nobody has said it to this point. He does attend all the training council meetings, and he is through statute one of the 12 members of that council. So he remains fully aware of what's going on throughout our section of the division.
Thanks.
Senator Clarkson, did you have a question?
Well, and I just would add, and at this time of year, he's fully aware of everything we're doing too. Mike and I are intimately involved on another bill. I would like to just ask two questions. First of all, I'd just like to note that I think the Fire Academy and Council really are unique in many ways in state government, because they are one of the few places we see volunteers and professionals working side by side, doing the same job in a way, and it's very unusual blending of those two and training them to same standards, and some are professional and some are not. And I think that's an interesting, really, as we oversee these things, you're really unique in that regard. I suppose EMT has some of that, but you even more than others. Anyway, my questions are twofold. Would you be kind enough? I have a son who's a volunteer firefighter here in Woodstock, and I'm just curious what the balance is between volunteers and professionals, how many of each? And then my second question is, what do we do about bad apples in the fire service? Are departments responsible for getting rid of them, or is there, to build on Brian's point about grievance, is there a disciplinary function that is a state version of a disciplinary function, or is it just department to department?
Yes, Pete.
Thank you, Senator. So your question about volunteerism, there are 5,500 firefighters throughout the state of Vermont, and over 95% of those are volunteer. Now, in some cases, those men and women are paid in different ways. Some are paid by the calls they get on. that they respond to. Some are paid a small stipend yearly, but by and large, the group is volunteer. We're starting to see in the fire service more and more chief positions on fire departments being made career instead of volunteer because of the enormous amount of time that it takes to lead a department. So that those numbers are increasing, but the career service is not. I don't think it's growing exponentially. I don't think over the next 5 years we're going to see 50% change or anything like that. And in terms of who is responsible for disciplining the firefighters around the state, that's specifically to a department or to a municipality. We do now have the right to deny somebody certification based on their criminal record or some sort of wrongdoing. At any time during a training process, if we feel as though a student is not does not meet the requirements of the state of Vermont in terms of their legal being, their if they've broken the law, or if in the class they do something that is inappropriate. And most of the time, because the people that are signing up for our programs that are 200 hours long are very dedicated, we do not run into situations where people are not fully vested in the system and are doing something that's inappropriate. But in those occasions, we have the right to remove them from class. And oftentimes we will have the conversation with their fire chief prior to removing them from the class. And those relationships typically are very good in the way that the chief understands our perspective and generally supports it. But those are very, very few as a result of, if somebody's going to take the time from their family and their part-time job or their full-time job to spend 200 hours becoming a firefighter 1 or a firefighter 2 or an officer, their commitment is typically good with great intent of doing good for their community. And we don't, as a rule, don't run into many of those situations anymore.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any more questions? So this was very helpful to us. We were hoping that you would have some magic statutory language that would assure the independence of the Criminal Justice Council, but given that you didn't come in with magic language, we still are very happy that you gave us this lesson on the Academy and the Council in the Fire Safety Division. Any other questions or comments, committee? Senator Polina?
I just really got to say how much I appreciate firefighters in general. I mean, buildings on fire, everybody's running out and the firefighters are running in. I mean, it's just amazing to me that people are willing to do that, quite honestly. I really, really appreciate it.
It is interesting that we're responsible to train those individuals that want to run to this versus running away. So it challenges us from a training perspective too. Just the audience that we're training. And to touch just one brief second on the volunteer and career partnership, we also have a fire service coalition with representation from every fire service entity group. That coalition is very efficient and effective. The group gets along real good, works really nice. The other part is we in fire safety, we have urban search and rescue, and we also have the state hazmat response team. Both those teams comprise of both career firefighters and volunteers. They all get paid the same when they're out on call, so the hat's off at the door. has been extremely successful. And it just builds a lot of great partnerships between those two entities out there on our special team. So I would just add that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Senator Clarkson?
Yeah, sorry, one further thought. I mean, I know you have a challenge recruiting new firefighters, volunteer firefighters in particular. And so I'm just curious, who's responsible for sort of marketing that? And is there a campaign designed to do that? And the reason I ask is I'm also curious about who is that a division? Because we have all this ARPA money coming, and I'm just curious if there's a way that can be used to both educate the public about fires and or recruit more. And the educating about fires I've been made well aware of, sadly, with the death of a student in Portland, Oregon. And the Portland Fire Department created a terrific video educating particularly university and college students who are in housing, not always perfect, and about fires, who hadn't necessarily grown up there. And I'm just curious, if you do the same kind of thing, and how is that something that's on your radar screen for
the best answer,
money?
right. The best answer I'm going to give you is that it's on our radar. Has been for a number of years, and I think you'll see the same struggle in law enforcement regarding recruitment and retention. And there's fewer people to select from today too. There's fewer students that are coming out of high school. There's a lot of things that are against us when it comes to seeking volunteers to give up time with no pay. To devote all these hours. And, another challenge is the fire service has really evolved over the past 10, 15 years. There's a lot more operational involvement that the fire service engages in now compared to 15, 20 years ago. Car accidents are different. EMS strategies are a lot different. Structure fires are a lot different. They burn a lot hotter, a lot faster. The challenges that are out there are really stacked up against the recruitment. We have had a number of meetings with the Washington delegation. Haley Perrell from Senator Sanders' office has been a big supporter and ally with us. She's attended a number of meetings with us and offered some social media resources to help come out with a video on recruitment and retention. But it's across all disciplines, nursing, it's law enforcement, fire, but it's absolutely on our radar and a concern of where, what's the fire service going to look like in 5 years?
Yeah, big question. Yeah. Mike, I'll send you this video that was sent to me so you can see what Portland did.
So I think that, as Mike pointed out, it's across all professions. And one of the issues that, in addition to not being enough people, not enough trained people, I think one of the issues is that we're seeing an increase in the number of people who want to have regular 9-to-5 jobs. They don't want to be called out in the middle of the night. And we're seeing that with our road plowers. We're seeing it with law enforcement. We're seeing it with professional medical people. A friend of mine was an OBGYN, and they couldn't recruit somebody to their office because she wanted a regular job and not to be called out in the middle of the night if somebody was giving birth. So I think that there's, I don't know how we change that mindset, but that is a huge issue in terms of recruiting people who need to be able to respond when there is the emergency or the event. So, any other questions or comments or concerns right now? So what I'm going to suggest, thank you very much, Pete and Chris and Mike, very helpful. Thank you. What I'm going to suggest to Bill is that, or Bill and Bill, is I know that Mark said that it needed to be enshrined in statute, how to maintain that independence of the council. And I would suggest that before our next meeting on this, that if you can work with, I don't know if it would be Tucker or Amarin, to come up with some kind of language around what kind of language do we need to put into statute to assure the independence of the council. Is that a challenge that you'll accept?
Absolutely. We appreciate
Okay.
the opportunity. We have interacted with Amarin some. I think we've shared some language, but we'll get on that again.
Yeah, I think that, and I'd like to take this up again next week. So if you can, toward the end of the week, so if you could have some kind of language and I don't know who else it would be run by, but just to see if we can really strengthen the statutes around the independence.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members or comments? Does that make sense to do that?
Yes.
Okay, and Senator Clarkson, I believe you are leaving.
Oh, happily, it got changed.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry.
So,
Okay.
but I thank you again to the firefighters. I'd echo Anthony's comment. We are in your debt, and I
Always.
appreciate it more fully being a mother of a firefighter.
Senator Rahm, did you have a question?
Well, when our bills come back with more language on the independence of the Criminal Justice Council, I was wondering as a new senator if there's language somewhere about greater oversight and professional regulation, investigation into misconduct that's embedded in your current framework in the CJC, or if it lives in statute. I don't have that information, and I would like to see how you plan to do that and how you plan to make sure that it's a mix of former law enforcement and civilian oversight in that process.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that language exist somewhere and I've just missed it?
I believe that, well, I'm not sure if I'm answering it right here, but I think there was a lot of language in 124 that directed the disciplinary procedures. And then I think the council itself has additional language.
That's correct, Senator. Specific reference to the ability of the council to create subcommittees, but specific mention about the professional regulation subcommittee. We felt that was particularly important to have in statute because there are due process issues at play, and would feel better if that was clarified in statute. We have the authority, but creating the subcommittee to handle it, which is our busiest subcommittee, as you'll hear tomorrow from Bill Sheets. So we'll get you that language. I think you might have it, but we'll make sure you have it again.
Thank you.
And just so the rest of the committee knows, to be transparent, I asked Bill Sheets in an email to help us better understand the demographic makeup of the Criminal Justice Council currently. So instead of guessing, he's going to ask the rest of the committee members how they identify on various demographic indicators to better understand the diversity of the Criminal Justice Council currently.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you so much. And we will, I'm hoping maybe next Thursday, but I'm still trying to figure out next week's schedule. So we'll go there. And again, I thank the fire safety members who are here to speak to us. That was very helpful. Thank you. And thank you for your service. We do appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks. Bye. All right, committee, I believe we're going to take a little leap here now and hear from Ellen, do a walkthrough of S96. So this afternoon, what I'd hope to do is do a walkthrough of S96. Hi, Ellen. S122 and S106. So, and then because we need to figure out some of our priorities, but it's hard to figure out the priorities until we know what the bills actually say. So with that, we'll do a walkthrough of S96. Thanks, Ellen. And I believe we have, usually we ask the sponsor if they want to come in and meet with us, but I believe we have the sponsor with us.
Here I am.
So,
Yeah, I'll let Ellen go with it and speak if it makes sense after.
yeah, thanks. Okay, Ellen?
Sure, thanks. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I don't think I've been in this committee in a very long time, so it's nice to see all of you. Do you normally share screens, or do you want me to just walk you through the language?
If at all, what, Ellen Clarkson, what are you saying?
It's on our website.
Yeah, we do have it. And so you know all of us? We can introduce ourselves. Just
I
so that
think so.
Sure. I'm Jeanette White from Windham County.
Anthony Polina, Washington County.
Brian Collmore, Rutland County.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District, and I know Ellen well. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yes, Ellen is all too familiar with me, very helpful on a lot of my bills. Hi, Ellen, in case you're wrong, Chittenden County.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and so for the record, I'm Ellen Tchaikovsky, and I handle natural resources law, which largely involves land use. So that's why I worked on this bill. It's pretty straightforward. S96 is relating to the state planning office. It's fairly short, and I'll walk you through the language, but it is about creating a study committee to look at the existing state planning office or potentially a different entity to work on land use planning, but also more broad government cooperation and planning more broadly. So the first section on page 1 establishes a purpose. So the purpose of this act is to develop a recommendation for reviving and modernizing the state planning office, to oversee and coordinate at every level of government the prioritization of areas of investment into Vermont's economy and people aligned with climate goals and environmental sustainability, community engagement, equity, and language access in government operations, long-term emergency and disaster preparedness and recovery. Then on to page 2, standardized data collection and management and intergovernmental communications and coordination. So then section 2 sets up a study committee to look at those areas that were just mentioned. So there is created a state planning office study committee to develop a recommendation for an entity to oversee and coordinate planning at every level of government. The committee shall be composed of 3 members of the House, not from the same political party, appointed by the Speaker, 3 from the Senate, not from the same political party, appointed by Committee on Committees, and then 3 members of the public appointed by the Speaker of the House. So 1 member from the business community, 1 member representing persons with disabilities, and 1 youth member. And then 4 members of the public appointed by the Committee on Committees. So 1 member of an environmental organization, 1 member with land use planning experience, 1 member from a racial equity organization, and 1 member representing a regional development corporation. So that's 13 members, 6 legislative members, and 7 members of the public. Then the powers and duties of the committee. So the committee shall study the need for a single entity to oversee and coordinate planning across all levels of government, including the following: whether the state planning office should be housed within the executive branch or be an independent body, what the duties of the office should be, how the office will be funded, how to ensure equity while growing Vermont's economy in a sustainable, climate-focused manner, whether any existing state program should be housed within the office, and how to better standardize regional and local government coordination, support, and communication. For the purposes of scheduling and preparing recommended legislation, the committee shall have the assistance of the Office of Legislative Operations and the Office of Legislative Counsel. So then there is a report due from the committee December 15th, 2021. So this is just a summer fall study committee. The committee shall report back to the General Assembly with its findings and a draft bill creating the office proposed. On page 4, there's a list of people the committee should hear from. So the committee shall receive input on the office from the following entities: the Vermont Chief Performance Officer, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, the Agency of Digital Services, the Department of Public Service, the Agency of Transportation, the Director of Racial Equity or designee, one or more representatives from the regional planning commissions, the Vermont Planners Association, and the Director of the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. In studying the issues with creating the state planning office, the committee shall review the state's existing environmental management plans, climate change mitigation plans, economic development plans, and workforce development plans, the regional planning system and how it may interact with the state planning office, the municipal and regional planning grant system, and evaluate whether it should be administered by this office, best practices for community engagement that the office may need to incorporate into its work, current data collection practices within the state agencies, and recommendations for developing common standards, the duties and responsibilities of the prior state planning office, and models from other states. So that sort of hints at what we're talking about here. There previously was a state planning office for quite a long time. It is no longer, it is still in statute, but it hasn't been functioning for a while. So this would have the committee look at the past state planning office, what they did, and potentially look at what other states do to sort of see what model may be best for Vermont. Now I'm on the middle of page 5. So meetings, the Office of Legislative Counsel shall call the first meeting to occur on or before July 1, 2021. Committee shall select a chair from among its members at its first meeting. Majority shall constitute a quorum. Committee shall cease to exist on December 31st, 2021. Committee shall meet at least 5 times and take testimony from a variety of stakeholders, including those with experience in state land use planning, regional planning, municipal planning, economic planning, or strategic planning. The committee may investigate models used in other states to determine if any would be applicable for Vermont. And then finally, attendance during the adjournment of the General Assembly, members shall be entitled to per diem compensation and reimbursement for expenses. And this act shall take effect on passage. So it's a pretty straightforward study committee to look at what may be missing in overall sort of land use and other planning in the state now that the previous state planning office is not active. And this is also a little bit related to the former development council, the development cabinet that was part of the governor's cabinet, which was repealed a few years ago. And I think Senator Rahm can also speak to some of the other intent, but it's a pretty straightforward summer study committee to investigate a new model to be adopted.
Any questions, Senator Rahm? Do you want to?
So I would just, I would add that there's a House companion bill, and some members of the House and myself have really tried to cast a wide net in better understanding the history of planning in the state, and then looking around the country. And kind of the trend that I would say we've seen is that it's hard to look at models where they've recently stood up a planning committee in the country. There are a lot of states that started with a land use planning oriented planning committee, and where we at some point, I'm not going to get into partisanship because there's people who disagree about which governor sort of made some ultimate decisions, but where we started to say, this isn't something that we really need. This is not a critical function in government, in state government. Other states built on their land use planning office and made it a budget planning office, a strategic planning office, started to use it as the wing to do interagency connectivity and coordination within state government, but also that interagency operative wing for local and regional county government. And so we've talked to planning, professionals around the country in their own states, departments. We have students from UVM looking at Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Colorado as for some comparable examples, and they should have their research done soon. But in the really big picture, I would just say, as we look at getting, more than the equivalent of our annual state budget in federal funding, this seems like a very critical time to evaluate what success looks like, to have a record of what we're trying to accomplish with one-time funds right now, and what investments actually start making a long-term difference, and how we tie that to our quality of life outcomes that we've been talking about in committee, and other areas where we currently don't have great infrastructure to engage our communities and help them feel like a part of government decision-making. So, I just think it's, as we talked about with our new chief performance officer, a pretty critical time, especially with all the money we're going to spend on digital services as well. When we think about modernizing government, who kind of holds the record of what we mean by that, and where to find reports and studies and, ongoing strategic direction for our state? I think we've just heard from a lot of leaders at the state level that we don't have that, or it's very much tied to the current administration of the moment. And if they leave, a lot of things get lost that make it really hard to create the continuity we need to do our jobs well for Vermonters.
Any questions, comments, committee? Allison?
Yeah, I'm so I hadn't realized we didn't have, this is one of those things where I thought that's what Sue Zeller ran. Quite honestly, I mean, I know she's our chief performance officer, but for some unknown reason, thought she ran the planning office, and I'm sort of stunned we don't have a planning office, because, and yet, it's another overlay of government. But on the other hand, it keeps, once we agree to, getting consensus around a plan, the strategic plan, of course, will be a challenge. But what a great thing it would be to have a plan that's bigger than a single administration. So, to me, that is one of the pluses, is it's like long-term goals for Vermont, and how do we keep driving to achieving and accomplishing those goals, independent of who's in charge, but working with whoever's currently doing that work. To me, anyway, I'm sort of stunned we don't have this. I thought we had it.
I think that I think I was actually in GovOps when it was eliminated. I think it was during Douglas's administration, but I do have a couple, and I think that we do need some kind of a focal point for planning. But I also know that a change in administration means that there is some movement out there to change the direction we're heading in. And so I don't think we can have a 5-year or 10-year strategic plan that eliminates the ability of a new administration to change that plan and to move in a different direction, because that's what elections are all about. So I do think I have some a couple very specific questions about the bill. And I think that it assumes that there will be a planning office, because at the very beginning it says that it doesn't say if it determines that there is a need, then they should do this. And at the end it says present legislation to create an office. So it assumes that that this summer study committee is going to come up with a recommendation that there be a planning office. And I think that is in a study, we shouldn't assume the outcome. So that's just a comment on the way it's written. And I also noticed that there's no municipal people in here. There's a regional planning representative, but there's no municipal people in here at all. So
well, actually, it's a regional development person. And that was one of my questions: is why isn't there a regional planning person?
Yeah, it's a regional development. Yeah,
it's a development. I thought, really, why don't we have our regional planners in there? They need to be there. But so, good question, Jeanette. We need, if we go forward, it would.
So you're not making me cry. I think this is the first day I always remember that I have seasonal allergies. So forgive me. Totally open to all of your points, Madam Chair, especially having been in this committee and in the business of government operations for much longer than me. I think we threw a lot of the appropriate stakeholders into the bill and took some out. And I wouldn't say that all of those decisions were as intentional as they needed to be. And, I think this ended up striking a balance in our own minds between saying we should just have a planning office and we should study it and make sure we're on the right path. So I hear you that they may decide, we may want to change the language so that it's more flexible. And if it has more of a kind of that council approach that existed at one point, where you just take a lot of different stakeholders and require that they get together around planning more often. So very open to other permutations and open to language changes in the bill. I do think, I hear you on the governor being able to change direction. I mean, a vast preponderance of states have a planning office that I would, having worked in an executive branch in local government in Burlington, it usually, I think, becomes a value add for an executive to walk in and have a planning office where they can say, yes, we're going to change the strategic direction 5 degrees, but I have a lot of institutional memory to draw on, of what's come before me, so that I don't fatigue the bureaucracy, which doesn't change, so that I don't fatigue people with a reform that has been tried before or something that, they can already tell you isn't working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Any other questions? Or yes, Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Senator Rahm, I have to say I have some concerns about the bill. I'd have to be convinced a little bit more before I could support it. I'm trying to get my arms around what will be different should this pass from what is the current landscape. Some of it seems as though we're just sort of putting on another layer of bureaucracy on top of what we already have. I'm thinking again, and Madam Chair and Senator Clarkson have already mentioned, what would this do to the regional planning commissions? I mean, it seems like there'll be a watchdog on top of them, and they're already doing work. We also already have a state planning office. I realize it hasn't been very active, but why don't we try to rejuvenate that rather than creating something new? So I just have some concerns like that.
If I could just say one thing, which is that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston has put out many great reports on their Working Cities Challenge, which is now up here in Northern New England as the Working Communities Challenge. And they have demonstrated time and again that alignment and coordination and intergovernmental communication can leverage hundreds of millions more dollars for our regions and communities that struggle with absorbing capital. So often if they don't have convening institutions beyond regional government, then it can be very hard to deploy resources properly and draw on the ability to get even more capital embedded in the communities that need it most. And I can share some studies to that effect, but the idea is not to be a drain on state resources, but to actually multiply them and rely less on taxpayers to really build our critical programs.
Senator Polino?
I like the idea. I think I look forward to hearing what these folks who are researching how it works in other states have to say. I mean, I feel like we're kind of brainstorming this in a way, so I don't have a particular exact picture of what I'm proposing, but I don't see it as something that would necessarily be duplicating regional planning necessarily. I see it as something that would provide continuity between administrations. So we all know we want to expand broadband, right? But every governor says we're going to expand broadband, but we can't seem to quite make it happen. So we have a new governor. That means you're going to change course, but it'd be good for the new governor to walk into the planning office and say, so where are we exactly with broadband? And, where should we be going? And so these people keep an eye on the prize, regardless of who the governor is. Anyway, that's just a thought. I just think that it's worth thinking about. My good friend of mine was the head of the planning office under Madeline Kunin. We should get him in at some point to talk about what it was like to work on the 5th floor and run the state planning office.
Yes, he was one of our conversations as we crafted.
George?
Oh, I was thinking of Bruce Post, who.
This is George Hamilton.
Okay.
He went on to start the Institute for Sustainable Communities with Madeline Kunin as well. He was the director of that after they both left state government.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just a thought. I think because there's people raising good questions about it, but I do think there's a reason to be doing planning that goes beyond an administration. And I'd be curious to see what they say, how it works in other states.
Yeah. And even, something as simple as, I know we have regional planning agencies and, et cetera, but then we've had each state department and agency come in almost and say, oh, we just stood up a language access contract, well, they should be able to feed back to each county and local government. These are the common languages spoken in your community. These are the contracts that are sort of sound and provide the best services. I mean, there's also a way to sort of gain efficiencies and not continue to use personnel time to reinvent the wheel and help our communities at the local level more than we already do with understanding. Every community almost comes to me and asks, do you know the 10 languages spoken in my area besides English? And, that's a call to the planning office to say, this is what you should do to stand up a local language access plan. These are some opportunities for services. These are the 10 most common languages in your community. This is stuff that other planning offices around the country do perform as services for.
So one of my concerns in it, as we look into this more, is what actually goes through the planning office. I mean, we could just eliminate all our agencies and just have a planning. I mean,
Right.
if we want everything to go through the planning office. So I'd be curious to hear what we think should go through a planning office and what really does reside in the different agencies and how a planning office differs from a council and from the governor's cabinet and their role in terms of communicating and stuff. So Senator Clarkson?
Yeah, a good example of some of the challenge and balance is, let's say, water quality, where the feds have said, you need to do this by X date. And we have leadership in the agency that oversees it that changes, administration to administration. They have a plan, the feds have a plan, and coordinating that plan and keeping us on target as we navigate the implementation of it is a kind of, to me, a good example of an issue that needs that coordinating eye, that needs the consistent, the keeping the eye on the prize, and helping us accomplish what we're wanting to do. And we've seen that ball dropped in the last 15 years. We've seen that ball dropped, and I can see that this would be a great way to coordinate and hopefully accomplish some of our goals maybe sooner rather than later. Anyway, I think it's an
Okay.
intriguing.
We will, we are now at 3:00 and we've been joined by Senator Pearson. So we're going to jump to S 122. It is, and we will continue this conversation and get some people in to testify and talk more specifically about this bill. Okay.
See you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks.
All right, so let us jump to S122. How would Senator Pearson, do you want to give us the lay of the land here, and then Ameren can walk us through the bill itself?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Pearson from Chittenden County. This was a funny one, but as folks know, I continue to work on national popular vote around the country, and so pay attention to this quirky system we have for electing the president. And last summer, the Supreme Court ruled on an issue related to whether or not there were so-called faithless electors. So when Biden wins in Vermont, there are 3 Democratic electors that come. In fact, one of them is in the room with us, that come to the State House and dutifully vote for, in this case, Biden, and that's how he wins. Many states, including Vermont, have attempted over the years to bind those people so that Senator Rahm, when she comes to vote for Biden, can't just freelance and decide she's going to vote for somebody else. This is so-called faithless elector. This has not really ever been a problem in the country, though there have been many cases where somebody has not voted for the preordained candidate, but it's never changed the outcome of an election. Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that states are well within their power to bind an elector, to be faithful, if you like. When that ruling came down, I was wondering about Vermont's situation. I looked at the statute. We do indeed already bind our electors. But I noticed there was a little problem in there. And the way the statute was set up was quite straightforward for the current lay of the land, where we use a winner take all, where Biden wins in Vermont and we get all 3 of our electors go to Biden. We handled that, but our statute did not handle the scenario where national popular vote would be dictating an election. And of course, folks will remember that Vermont has enacted national popular vote. And so, in fact, in that scenario where our 3 electors were kind of stemming from whoever got the most votes in the country, our faithless elector law that was binding them was at odds with potentially national popular vote. So anyway, it's a fairly straightforward situation, a fairly straightforward solution. It just now, what Ameren will walk you through sort of says, we have a faithless elector law. It works in the event of the current, and we'll also, we'll handle it under the situation of national popular vote. So that's what we're trying to do. Not a big change, not urgent, but would be smart for us to do before 2024. And some, other states are looking at this just because of the Supreme Court ruling has spurred this on, and because our presidential elections have been kind of contentious lately. I would just point out, I didn't include it in the draft, but Will maybe would have a thought. There is not a great process to fill vacancies necessarily. If the electors were in a snowstorm and couldn't come to Montpelier or something, you may want to consider that. I don't think it really matters, but there is an opportunity to look at that too. Anyway, so not really what I'm trying to do here is not a change of policy, but actually a correction to make sure that our faithless elector law is sort of ready to apply in the event national popular vote is dictating the election outcome for the whole country, and as Vermont is a compacting state would. And I'll just take a moment to say we're now adopted in 16 states. National popular vote goes into effect when it's passed states with 270 electors. Those 16 states have 196 electors. So we're moving. I mean, it's slow and steady, but I think when Vermont came on, we were the 4th or 5th state. So we've come a long way.
So I'm sure Amron will address this, but I want to just make this clear. If the faithful electorate issue works fine just now because of the way we do the electoral college, if in the future, if national popular vote becomes effective, if Vermont votes for Smith, but the nation votes for Johnson, then Vermont's 3 electors vote for Johnson, not for Smith. They vote for the national popular winner, not whoever Vermont voted for, right?
Yeah, that's how the National Popular Vote Compact works.
Right, but that's what you're doing here, is you're saying that in the event that it becomes, that the compact becomes reality, then our 3 electoral votes go to the national popular winner, not the Vermont winner.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the National Popular Vote Compact does.
Right.
But in our Faithless chapter or section of law, the determination on whether or not they were faithful was hinged to Vermont's results.
Right.
Only. And so that could set up a conflict. And so this is, I mean, I regret not having it to you earlier, so you could have done it in your more sort of technical election stuff, but we just didn't get it together.
You consider mail-out voting technical?
Well, no, but you had asked us, anybody with an elections issue, bring it forward. Because this is not really a change in policy. It is sort of we should have caught this really when we were doing the National Popular Vote Bill years ago. But anyway, no harm yet. But yeah, we would want to make sure that basically, when voters vote, we want, the reason I have a faithless law is to sort of say, this is dependable. You vote for Biden, Biden's going to get the electors. Under a popular vote, we're saying whoever gets the most votes in the country is going to take the White House, and our faithless elector law needs to also honor that. And people don't really like the Electoral College. We're living with it, and you ought to have faith that it will act as advertised. And that's what this is trying to do.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that get that really clear, that that's what we're doing here. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are you going back to finance? You're welcome to stay with us.
Well, I'll make sure there's no questions for me.
Are there any questions for Senator Pearson? Yes, Senator Clarkson.
Well, it does at that exact moment make me realize it is the national popular vote and not the state popular vote, because of course the state popular vote would have us want to hold on to who we elected, and So
we've already made that decision.
Yeah, I know. It's a good reminder.
Senator Rahm, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to say, in case Senator Pearson wants to further respond in any way, I would definitely agree with him. And having been an elector this year, I got some calls from National Electoral College experts and people who look at the issue. And, for many of them, the verdict was it would take a long time or be quite impossible for us to probably abolish the Electoral College, which some have talked about, but to standardize what states do for electors would be a long way to sort of solving some of these problems in the country. Because when you're chosen as an elector, there's not a lot of guidance, there's not a lot of people who talk to you. People start to email you and pressure you to make a different decision than the decision of your popular vote or your state. So, I do think there's not a lot of expertise because unfortunately this issue doesn't ever become splashy enough, but the people who do follow this would say standardizing how this is done and how electors are given their guidance across the country is an important step to democracy.
Yeah.
Under current law, you could have had lots and lots and lots of pressure put on you and you could not have changed your mind under current law.
And
right. It would have just been up to the party to sort of install someone else, but
No, but they couldn't have.
Well, we do have, Sarah White, we have already decided that electors are bound by the election, but we didn't have this is to Sarah Rahm's point, the current law doesn't have a great mechanism to actually deal with it. It says something like electors shall do this. Well, what if they don't? What we're trying to do here, because I was starting to look at it, Pennsylvania is sort of respected for having a pretty airtight system. And so the mechanics here, and I'll turn it to Ameren, but basically an elector hands their ballot to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State looks at it and says, you played by the rules, thank you. Or you didn't play by the rules, this is invalid. And in that way binds the results. So there is, I should have addressed this, there is a bit of an update to the process, although we've already articulated this as a goal. And this is part of the joy of our federalist system, where we're a republic and we have control over our own elections. And anyway, but yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that it was a little loosey-goosey. I figured the law says you have to do this, you have to do it. But anyway.
We're giving Will some policing powers here.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let me know if I can help, or if you want any other experts that I can try to drum up for you. But
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So, Will, did you have some comments, or should we walk through the bill first?
It's up to you, Madam Chair. I know this is out of order for usual, but if I do have one question for Senator Pearson, if he's going to leave, that would be helpful to our discussion.
Okay.
And that is the quick point, Senator Pearson, and we can talk about this more. I'm really happy to work through it with you. And I get that this is a process change and not a policy change here. I was trying to read through it really carefully this morning and make sure we were doing everything we needed to do while we're in there playing with it. And I started to think about, so this has our canvassing committee issue the certificate of elections to the electors who, if the National Popular Vote Compact is in, of the party who won the National Popular Vote. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be determined by a week after the election when our canvassing committee meets and when those certificates are signed off on and issued. And so I just think we might have to think more about the timing of that. We definitely didn't know the National Popular Vote winner this year, 1 week after the election.
That's interesting. I think, Will, that so you're saying that today in Vermont, a week after, when the chairs come together or whatever, however that happens, and certify the results, that's when the Secretary of State, as our chief elections official, officially declares in this past case, the 3 Democratic electors.
Yeah.
I would encourage, so that timeline is an issue. My
immediate answer.
Well, it's interesting. So one point, by a week after the election, we had no question who had the most votes in the country, actually. So that is there. You might wonder about the exact vote total, but on election night, Joe Biden was up by 5 million votes. It was a quirk of the way the current system works that we wondered who won Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. But please check out the text of the popular vote agreement, because that may tweak some of that. I know that, of course, all states are bound to have an official result that they put on their certificate of ascertainment, which is 6 days before the meeting of
6 days before.
And that's where I believe the compact hinges to that process.
It says no later than that date, and it has this process where the chief election officials essentially communicate to the other chief election officials what their totals were.
So there's a bifurcation because the process you're talking about is for the Vermont totals. And maybe we need to make that explicit, and maybe it's already handled by the compact trumps state statute by virtue of being an interstate compact. So anyway, poke around. I that's a good question. I've not heard of that coming up elsewhere, but you guys are the experts. I'm happy to work with you if there are questions.
I think it'd be easy to figure out a fix to it. Just see it if we need to.
Okay.
And the way I would think immediately would be keep the canvassing committee where and when it is for now, and define another process for the final certification of who your electors are, if that needs to wait.
Yeah, that might be smart. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to walk through the bill? Thank you, Senator Pearson.
Thank you very much, everybody.
We
See you
miss you
later.
on this committee.
Nice to see you.
We should expand our committee and have seats for roving alumni.
All right. So, Amarin, would you like to walk us through this?
Certainly. For the record, Amarin Abergele, Office of Legislative Counsel. And this is a walkthrough of S-122, an act relating to the required votes of presidential electors. In Section 1, you have the amending of Title 17, Chapter 57, Subchapter 4. You'll see at the bottom of page 1 in Section 2731, there are a couple of minor corrections, changing board to committee, capitalizing president, and then you'll see the addition of language starting on line 18. So when the canvassing committee meets, it shall issue its certificates of election with respect to the presidential election to the electors nominated by the party whose candidate for president has received the greatest number of votes, except that if the agreement set forth in Title 17 VSA Chapter 58, and this is the compact among the states to elect the president by national popular vote, governs the appointment of the presidential electors, the committee shall issue its certificates of election with respect to the presidential election to the electors nominated in association with the national popular vote winner as provided for in subsection 2753C of this subchapter. Then moving down into section 2732, which is the meeting of electors. You'll see there are some changes down in subsection C. Each elector shall vote for the candidates for president and vice president who were nominated by the same political party or organization that nominated the elector, or for the legal successor who has replaced that candidate for president and vice president due to the candidate's death, resignation, or disqualification. So the goal of this language is to remove the requirement that the electors vote for the candidates who received the greatest number of votes at the general election, and rather this language should work for either circumstance, whether you are under a national popular vote or whether you are under the current process in Vermont. In subdivision 2, each elector shall present the elector's completed ballots to the Secretary of State, who shall examine them. The Secretary of State shall accept and cast the ballots of an elector who has voted for the candidates for president and vice president required under subdivision 1 of this subsection C. The Secretary of State shall not accept and shall not count an elector's ballots if the elector has not marked both ballots or has marked one ballot in violation of subdivision 1 of this subsection C. If an elector refuses to present a ballot, presents an unmarked ballot, or presents a ballot marked in violation of this subdivision 1 of this subsection C, that needs to be corrected. That is a subsection C, not a copyright sign. Then the elector's office is vacated. The Secretary of State shall declare the creation of the vacancy, and the vacancy shall be filled as set forth in subsection B of this section. In section 2, The effective date of this act is July 1st, 2021.
Any questions for Ameren? So, Ameren, I think Will had maybe some suggestions here for changes that in the procedure. Can you work with him to get those changes?
I would be happy to.
Thanks. Any questions for Ameren or Will on this issue? Okay.
I don't have a question, but I just
Senator
want to go on
Bowman.
record. I find the language kind of confusing. That's all I
Yeah.
would say.
I
This whole part on the top of page 3, where it says each elector shall vote for the candidates for president and vice president who were nominated by the same political party or organization, et cetera, that nominated the elector for the legal successor, et cetera. I mean, I understand kind of what you're telling us, but I have a hard time reading that. But I'm not saying I'm just saying I have trouble with the language. That's all. It could just be that I'm being dense about it.
No, I agree with you. Chris's explanation and the discussion before seemed much simpler and more straightforward. This seems so convoluted.
It is, and this is language that has been used in other states as a model, but it could be that we could be more specific and precise in our language if this does appear to be too confusing, and just simply state, here's what it is currently. If the state is operating under a national popular vote, this is what would happen instead. We could do that. We could do it that way.
Yeah.
That would help.
And then eventually we could do cleanup if the state does move over into national popular vote. And this could be the interim language.
Senator Collmore, did you have a?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So if I could ask Will, if we didn't take this bill up this year, would it matter? In other words, we don't have to do anything until 2024, correct? Or the year preceding that. Maybe.
True.
Thank you.
Yeah. It also all hinges on other states accepting the agreement still, which you have no way to know.
Yeah, it's just.
But you're right, at least 2024, because it's the next presidential. That's
right.
For sure.
I guess sense the same urgency, but that's okay. It was just a question.
No, it's an important question because there is no immediacy. How many votes did they say? I know 16 states, but it was what, 196 electoral votes are represented by those 16 states?
Yes.
And how many do they need? The same as
270.
They need 270.
That's how
So
many.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do away with the Electoral College. It just says that our electors will vote for the national popular winner when we have 270 votes. That's the way it's going to. Yeah. And this is I won't go into the national popular vote. We took a lot of testimony on that and we passed it. So, but you're right, Senator Collmore, we don't have to do anything with this year. So when we're looking at our schedule here and what we need to get done, we'll throw that into the mix, that this doesn't have to be done this year. Senator Clarkson?
I remember voting on the national popular vote. I just can't, I believe I was still in the House. So
yes,
it was a while ago.
It was during Governor Douglas's administration. And I remember working with Kurt Wright around on the issue, because it's really a bipartisan issue. And it was during Governor Douglas's administration, and he did not vote it, but he let it become law without his signature.
Pass into law without his signature.
Right.
So it was like 2008 or 9 or 10.
I don't know. It was somewhere in his administration.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And as Senator Pearson pointed out, we were the fourth state to do it. So, any other questions or comments or concerns on this one? Thank you, Amron. Thank you, Will. So don't worry about having new language until we decide whether this is something we are going to pursue, because I know you both have a lot of stuff to do without doing things that may not move this year. So, Senator Clarkson.
So I agree with Brian. It certainly doesn't need to be done, but if we know it needs to be done and we agree that it is important to sync those, fix this, why not just do it? I mean, if we're here and we know we can do it, and I know it's just a question of committee time, but
right.
I just say carpe diem in a way.
Yeah, well, when we talk about our priorities and what we really feel needs to be passed this year,
right.
We'll look at that.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Okay. So thank you. I believe maybe that, Will, are you joining us for the next one also?
I was invited and I'm happy to. I don't think my office really plays a role, but I'll listen in.
Okay, thank you. And are we going to have Senator Sirotkin join us, Gail?
He was invited, but I have not heard back from him, so I'm not expecting him.
Okay.
Do you want me to text him?
If you want to, I mean.
Yeah, and what's the number of the bill? Remind me.
106.
I'm doing that right now.
And we'll, in the meantime, we'll have Amron walk us through it. And
to be fair, this was a late invitation to Senator Sirotkin, so he may not be prepared for it.
Okay.
But he's right across the hall, right?
Right? He can just slip on over. Okay, I've texted him.
Why under if you look up S106 on the website, it says as introduced, and then it says as passed by the House.
Well, if you look at our website, it's just bill as introduced.
No, I know, but I'm looking at the, and I just wondered why it says as passed by the House. This is an S bill, but.
I noted that too, Madam Chair. I thought that was kind of bizarre.
Well, we could point it out to our secretary's office. Well, this is introduced by Sirotkin and Brock.
Yep. All right. Amron, do you want to walk us through this bill?
Yes.
I think I have the answer, Madam Chair, if you're interested.
Yes, I would be.
If you click on it, it brings you to a different bill, a 9-page bill that has nothing to do with this.
And it's page 106.
So, Gail, Michael says he's coming right now. He says,
oh, fantastic. That's great.
So
okay.
I assume he has the link. So
let's wait. Let's give him a minute to join us.
Good night.
Yeah. The bill says an act relating to equitable access to high quality education through community schools. So obviously it's maybe a holdover from the last session or something. I don't know.
Right.
No, I believe there is another H106 bill.
But this is S106.
This is
right.
S106.
So I will, I'll point this out to the Secretary's office.
Okay, thanks.
Right. And look,
Senator Rahm, did you?
Is here.
Yes. Senator Rahm, did you?
No, after Senator Sirotkin, maybe we could take a break, was all. Just
yeah,
a break would be great.
Well, let's hear from Senator Sirotkin now, since he has joined us. And
thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm minute late. I thought I had sent an email out asking to be called when you were ready, but I never hit send, which is not common. So this bill is in two parts, as you can see, dealing with live streaming. I guess I just feel like the experiment we've embarked upon this year has been a good one. It probably needs some tweaks and improvements, but I feel like there's sort of no going back at this point. It's a very transparent process for the public. I know it's hard for the public under the old system to go and find an audio tape or a disc and to listen to it and to pay for it and to go through all that. And I think the time has come. I think many other states do this. I think the US Congress does this. It's just more transparent. And I think the time has come, and we've learned from the Zoom environment. I don't know exactly what we learned in terms of cost. I do know what we've learned in terms of its workability, and it seems to work fairly well, despite some of us Luddites out there having difficulty with it. So that's the first half of the bill. The second half has to do with lobbyist identification. You've heard me on this one before. I spent 30 years in the building as a lobbyist, and I have some feelings about how the building operates somewhat in anonymity. I've often said I've spent many, many years, and maybe it's my fault, of running across people in the hallway, and after all that time, I still don't know their name, and I think it would help on a familial basis to have that kind of a little bit help in that environment. I also think it would help the productivity of the committees to know who is in your room at certain times. Having been a lobbyist for many years, I know that frequently I've been called upon because people knew who I was. I could answer a question that would get things, help the committee, or I could go out and promise to find something real quickly, and not knowing who's there frequently is, I think, somewhat of a hindrance. The second part is voluntary. It's to the only thing that really is required is that the sergeant at arms provide a model template for the badge, and then 2 years later report on how much it's been used. Given the encouragement of this bill, I know a lot of lobbyists, or some lobbyists, do this and say they would not necessarily be opposed to that. And if it comes back that it's working fine as a voluntary program, I think we just leave it as is. If not, we have a report to look at to see if it would help. The other thing is, I know that the Sergeant at Arms is supportive of this, I think primarily because of safety reasons, and many other states have done this to know more about who's in the building. So that's the bill.
So any questions for Senator Sirotkin? And then we'll have Amron walk us through it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, we will walk through the bill and then have a little discussion of it since we have a little time. So Amron, do you want to walk us through?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may we take a break after the walkthrough of this bill?
Oh, let's take a little
before.
5-minute break right now.
That would be great. I think that would be great.
My legs have fallen asleep. So Amron, would you like to walk us through S106?
Certainly. S106 is an act relating to the live stream of legislative proceedings of the General Assembly and lobbying regulations. Section 1 creates a pilot project to live stream legislative proceedings. The Office of Legislative Information Technology shall facilitate and coordinate a pilot project with a for-profit or nonprofit entity to assist and assess the effectiveness and cost of audio or audio and video live streaming the legislative proceedings of the General Assembly. The pilot project shall include the live stream by audio or audio and video means of all public proceedings of standing committees of both chambers and on the floors of the House of Representatives and the Senate during the 2022 legislative session. Section 2 is concerning lobbying regulations. The first section is legislative findings, which you heard a little bit about from Senator Sorotkin. Lobbyists fulfill an important role in the legislative process by ensuring that the perspectives of organizations, interest groups, and stakeholders are heard. However, as the number of lobbyists who work in the State House has increased, it has become more difficult for legislators, staff, press, and members of the public to know who is a lobbyist and who they may be representing. As a result, some members of the public may have the perception that there is a lack of transparency as to who is working as a lobbyist and for whom. Encouraging every lobbyist to wear identification that clearly indicates the lobbyist's name and the name of the client or firm will improve transparency and promote public trust in the legislative process. Section 3, lobbyist identification. When the General Assembly is in session, a lobbyist, as defined in Title II, Section 261, is encouraged to wear a name tag or another form of identification that is clearly visible and that states the lobbyist's name, the lobbyist's client or employer, or in cases where the lobbyist represents more than one client or employer, the name of the lobbyist's firm. And the identification must be substantially similar in size, format, and information displayed to a sample name tag or identification that shall be developed by the Sergeant at Arms. Subsection B, the Sergeant at Arms in the Office of Legislative Counsel shall report to the General Assembly on or before January 15th, 2023 on the rate of compliance by lobbyists with this section, the advantages and disadvantages of requiring that lobbyists wear name tags or identification, and a recommendation as to whether a voluntary program is sufficient or whether further legislative action to improve participation should be considered. In preparing the report, the Sergeant at Arms and the Office of Legislative Counsel shall solicit input from lobbyists, legislators, staff of the General Assembly, and other stakeholders. The effective date of this act is July 1st, 2021.
Any questions for Ameren? I do have a question about what on earth does it mean to do a pilot? Do you know that, or was that something that came from the sponsors?
This came from the sponsors. This legislation actually has been in 2 prior bills over the years, I believe once in 2015 and then maybe once in 2017 as well, the idea of a pilot. And my understanding from those prior bills and the brief information I have on this bill is that a pilot is really a temporary to see how it goes for 1 year and then evaluate whether it's worth making a permanent change.
So what does it mean with a for-profit or nonprofit? The pilot is with them. I don't understand that.
Right. So the idea is that the state would contract with an entity who would help the state help the legislature really evaluate the feasibility of doing live streaming, cost, efficiencies, and that would be the entity that would. So it's talking about, I guess it's intended to give flexibility as to who the legislature contracts with to provide these services.
You know, it could be the public access television. They might come up with that's a nonprofit.
But we're all, okay. Anyway, I have some serious concerns about this, but Senator Collimore?
I want to follow up on your question, Madam Chair, because I'm not clear either. And maybe it's unfair for us to ask Ameren, but if a pilot project indicates that there's already going to be something going on in terms of a program before we've even figured out how much it costs, I think that's a matter of concern. If this said that that the pilot project would happen after we had determined from either a profit or nonprofit group how much this was going to cost, I could understand that. But this seems to indicate that we're going to go ahead and do it and then try to figure out what the cost is. And I'm also concerned about that. And I just had a quick one for Will. I think I already know the answer, and I know we're not supposed to ask questions. I already know the answer. But lobbyist is defined, I believe. Where did I just see that? Oh, Brian. Well, anyway, it cites Title II. Am I guessing that means that that a lobbyist has to be registered with the Secretary of State's office before this would take place? In other words, if somebody was recently hired but not yet registered, they wouldn't have to wear a name badge, according to the way this is written.
Will, do you want to answer that?
That's right, because it ties it to that definition in Title II.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Clarkson?
Well, in a funny way, we've had the pilot. We've
Right.
had the pilot all year. Actually, it'll be 2 years, a year and a half. It'll be 18 months of this pilot. Albeit a pilot that, because it has not had to involve installing cameras in the State House or anything, that is a lot less expensive. I don't think we need a pilot here. I think we know the answer to a lot of this. And what we do need, to go to Brian's point, is we need a sense of what it would cost to actually accomplish this, and then we can weigh it. So I think we just need to, I think we've all appreciated the value of being able to have the public present at watching our proceedings, able to testify if necessary without having to drive 3 hours round trip to testify. We get that. I think we need to know the cost and the feasibility and how long it would take to roll it out. I think those are the questions, really, more than a pilot.
So my thought was that a committee could certainly begin to take that testimony and try and figure it out and get a cost estimate from JFO and from the legislative IT office, and start working on the details of how it might be, how we might roll it out.
Our committee could do that. I mean, I think that actually we exist to do exactly that, except it would be obviously the sergeant at arms who runs the mechanics of the building would obviously be involved. But heavens, we're pretty clear on the need, the interest, how it's great. And we just now need to figure out what we can afford, if we want to do it in stages, all that kind of stuff.
And I don't know that we need to contract with a for-profit or nonprofit to tell us the results.
No, I think we
That's
know
money ill spent.
But we probably would need to do an RFP to find a contractor whose results, we'd want to do a bid on it once we figured out what we wanted.
Well, for equipment and stuff like that. Not for them to tell us whether it worked or not.
No, we know it works.
Right.
We know that the live streaming of our work has been a very efficient, great opportunity for the public to have access to our work, great opportunity for people to not have to drive, and blah, blah, blah.
So I think that my feeling on this is that we work with the Rules Committee and the Joint Rules Committee to look at this further instead of setting up a pilot. Okay.
Yeah. Ready to rock and roll on it.
Senator Collmore?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I agree. I mean, we already have the ability for the general public to hear our floor sessions in both chambers. We don't need to do anything more there, except I guess if you wanted a video, but I'm not sure what that adds. I guess it does. I just want to comment on the other part of the bill, and if it stayed the way it was now, I would ask to divide the question, because we've already had Senator Sirotkin in the past introduce legislation about the lobbyist IDs. And I guess until we're ready to do that for ourselves and walk around wearing name tags, I still have an aversion to telling somebody else what to do in that regard. I know the House members have them, and that's fine. But I've never not known who the lobbyists in the room were. I don't think it takes too long to figure that out. So, yeah.
The chair can always ask who's in the room and get an answer. And interestingly enough, a female lobbyist today sent me a note about this and said that this actually is going to be much harder for female lobbyists to abide by, because men wear these nice little jackets and they can just put a little thing on there, but we wear scarves and silk blouses. And so anyway, I hadn't ever thought about that. Senator Clarkson?
On the other hand, let's be consistent. We're talking about transparency with our live streaming, transparency for all of us as to who we are. I mean, the public doesn't know who I am when I'm walking down the hall. I think actually it would be great if senators wore name tags. They could be discreet. They don't need to be big, huge mega things. But I actually think I've always supported this idea. And it's not just because I'm a former House member, because in the House I never wore a name tag. But we also have magnetic ones. There are lots of ways to deal with this. I think if we're talking about transparency, we need to own it, not just with live streaming, but also with declaring who you are, because lots of people don't know who we are when we wander around in the State House. And
I can tell you that I don't know. Last year, I didn't know who most of the House members were, even though they had on their name tags, because you have to get your nose right down in their shirt in order to read them. So it still isn't helpful. I mean, people, unless you had orange name tags for lobbyists and green name tags for senators and red name tags for, you still wouldn't know.
Well, but that might be something the Sergeant at Arms is thinking of, actually. That would be a great idea, because then you would know who was a member of the General Assembly, who wasn't, who was a lobbyist, who was an intern, who was an
advocate.
And the fine line between advocacy and lobbying?
Pay.
Right. Oh no, I'm clear on it.
So anyway. All right. So thank you. Are there any other questions for Ameren or Will?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Senator Polina, did you have to feed a turtle?
Well, I do in a couple of minutes. I have a couple of minutes.
Okay. All right. Any more questions or comments for Ameren or Will? Thank you, Will.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Will. Goodbye, Ameren.
Because I thought you wanted to talk about priorities for a minute.
Yep. I did. So where are we here, committee?
Oh, let me pull up your list. Hold on. It requires pulling up the list.
We haven't heard yet from a lot of the bills. So I just have a question about H-151. That's the one that deals with mausoleums. Did you look at that when I was out of it that week?
Yes.
Okay.
We did briefly.
Okay. All right. So I guess my question is, do we have enough? Do you feel comfortable enough that you have enough information on that one to move forward with it, to vote on it? Or do you need more testimony? I
forget what it was.
Huh?
I forget what the other parts of the bill were.
I wasn't there, so I didn't hear.
I know I was. I still can't remember.
I can't remember why it's needed, but I do remember the difference between a mausoleum and a columbarium. That's all I remember from that.
I know, I do too. I can tell you the difference, but I don't know anything more about the bill.
All right. Well, we're probably not ready to vote on it then.
No. We
But
probably ought to have the state registrar in. because part of this has to do with that.
Right.
You mean the archivist?
Well, the language says the state registrar may authorize the issuance of certified birth or death certificates.
Oh, right. It was about, right.
Okay, I guess we'll get more testimony on that one. How about 135? Are we familiar? Are we okay with?
Boards and
do we need
commissions?
more? That's the ethics technical changes. Do we need more on that, or are we ready to vote on that?
I think we could vote on it.
Yeah, I don't think we need much more on that.
Keisha?
Yeah.
Brian?
I'm fine voting on it.
Okay. How about the Berry charter change?
We still haven't had Rob Leclerc come in.
He doesn't need to, he said.
No? Okay.
No. But are we ready to have we heard enough on that one? Are we ready to vote on that?
Can someone just remind me, given all that's in my brain about crossover, can somebody just remind me, it was pretty modest technical changes about, appointing people and oral, right? I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't have it in front of me, but I was ready to vote it out that day, so.
Yeah, I recall the same thing. It's nothing compared to the Montpelier charter change, which is significant.
Right.
So I thought Barry voted that they couldn't have flags besides the American flag flown on municipal property. Is that not?
That's not in the charter, is it?
I don't know.
Huh?
I
No,
thought
it's not.
No, I don't think that was in their charter change.
Okay.
No, it was not.
There was a flag issue that we discussed, though.
I don't remember any flag issue.
Not when I was here.
What's the Berry number again, Senator White?
127.
127?
177.
177.
No,
127 is the ethics.
127, yeah, is the ethics technical changes.
No, 177 is the Montpelier charter.
Okay. It's 127 then. Oh, I see you. So some places you have the numbers after and some places you have the numbers before.
Well, there should be a semicolon in between things, but 127 is the Berry charter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have issues with it?
Not that I recall.
I don't remember what it was, but I don't think there were any issues with it.
I'm open.
Yeah.
It had to do with allowing an assistant town clerk to oversee an election, that kind of a thing.
Right. It was pretty
It
modest.
separated the clerk and the treasurer.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't remember anything standing out. I think we could vote that out.
I agree.
And whatever the flag issue was not in their charter change. They may have voted.
Yes.
At the
I
select
think
board
town
meeting?
meeting they did or something because we discussed.
Well, their city council had a big argument about why they didn't want to fly the Black Lives Matter sign. And then somebody said, well, if you're going to do that, you have to do this one, this other flag, and then this other flag and this other flag. So they came to some weird agreement about certain flags being able to go up the flagpole on certain times, but it's nothing for us to worry about. It was an argument that they had amongst themselves. It was really unfortunate, but.
So yeah, I just skimmed through the Berry charter change and didn't see anything that wasn't technical, like the clerk and assessor.
Yeah, I didn't think so. All right, so I think we're ready to. Oh, that's H127. Yeah, I looked up S127. H1, yeah, okay. And then on H122, I'm going to throw in a zinger here. It should be pretty pro forma. It's the boards and commissions bill. But when the boards and commissions committee, or whatever we're called, met, one of the things that we had put in there last year was to eliminate the State Board of Education.
Right.
And the House, well, there was some discussion on it. And in the meantime, Senate Education, headed by Senator Baruth, worked with the State Board of Education and the Agency of Education to get the duties and responsibilities of the board and the agency kind of in statute in line with what is current practice and what they need to do. So it was a complete rewrite of the statutes, and everybody was in agreement on it. So the Boards and Commissions Committee put that into the bill, that whole bill that the Senate passed that the House didn't take up. The House took it out and said that they were going to spend more time on it. So I just had an email conversation with John Carroll, who's the head of the Board of Education, and he has been working with the House Education Committee, and they want to set up a summer study committee to look at this. My suggestion is that we put back the Senate bill back into the Boards and Commissions bill and send it back to the House.
And that's to eliminate the board.
No. What it is the State Board and the Agency of Education worked really closely with Philip Baruth's committee last session,
Right.
and came up with a rewrite. No, it doesn't
Okay.
eliminate it, but it makes it clear that these are the responsibilities of the board and these are the responsibilities of the agency. And right now, the statutes are completely non-reflective of what in reality should be.
Okay.
Is that something that you feel Senator Campion should be in on?
I sent him a note, and he's going to bring it up with his committee by the end of the week.
Okay, so we won't vote out the boards and commissions until
We
hear back.
won't vote that out until, but I just wanted you to be aware that because it has been 2 years now that the House Education Committee has not done anything on this issue, and it really, really needs to be done. And Senator Baruth's committee did a really good job of working with everybody to come up with a good bill. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Sounds good.